All right, welcome back to the Young Turks, and we are here at the National Conference for Media Reform. We're going to be interviewing a lot of folks. We got 4 hours of interviews. All right, but our guest right now is Amy Goodman, the legendary Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! Thank you for coming on, Amy.
It's great to be with you, Cenk.
Amy's also the author of the new book, Standing Up to the Madness, Ordinary Heroes in Extraordinary Times, by Amy Goodman and her brother David Goodman.
That's right.
Amy, everybody hears so often about Democracy Now!, and it's kind of legendary, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about what it is so people that haven't heard about it know exactly what it is.
Well, we began 12 years ago as the only daily election show in public broadcasting, and we were on a couple dozen community radio stations, 1996. Then, right around September 11th, we started broadcasting on one public access TV station in Manhattan, because we're based in Manhattan, and the rest was radio. And then it just took off. Every time a public access station would put us on the air, then the local radio station would say, hey, can we run you? And then the PBS station would say, can we run you? And the NPR station would say, can we run you? And then we went on both TV satellite networks, Free Speech TV, a wonderful independent channel on Dish Network, channel 9415, and also Link TV, which is 9410 on Dish, and it's also on DirecTV, channel 375. So it just started growing. We are now broadcasting on 700 radio and television stations around the country on the satellite networks. We're video and audio podcasting at democracynow.org. Our headlines are available in Spanish, and over 200 radio stations are taking them around the world. And the transcript of every daily hour broadcast is online from top to bottom at democracynow.org. So millions of people are going to it. And, you know, the whole idea, we should not be as unique as we are, but the corporate media has failed us. So people are looking for independent voices, as you know. And that's why this conference is so important. I mean, independent media's time has come.
Amy, you know, you really built it from the ground up, and you were partly forced to do that because of the situation in the media as it stands now. You know, and I really admire that. But I want to break it down even further, and I want to understand how you did it, because it's so hard. Because, you know, funny that you started on public access, because I also started on public access. And I thought about doing the same thing, but it was Herculean a task. You know, I was on Arlington public access way back in the day. That was probably 96, you know, when you first went on Manhattan's. But how did which local radio stations pick you up first?
Well, first we came out of Pacifica Radio.
Right.
Pacifica is the oldest independent media network in the country. It was founded in 1949 in Berkeley, California by a war resistor named Lou Hill. He came out of the detention camps, and he said there's got to be a media outlet that is not run by corporations that profit from war, but by journalists and artists. So KPFA was born, the first Pacifica station. Then there was KPFK in Los Angeles in 1959. My station, New York, WBAI, in 1960. 1977, WPFW in Washington. In 1970, KPFT went on the air in Houston. These are the 5 Pacifica stations. KPFT in Houston is the only radio station in the country whose transmitter was blown up. They went on the air in 1970, and within a few months, well, the Ku Klux Klan strapped dynamite to the base of the transmitter and blew it to smithereens. The silver lining was, let's face it, community radio doesn't get a lot of attention. They didn't have money for an advertising budget. So when they were blown up, it blew them into the consciousness of the Houston potential listening audience. And just as they got back on their feet and rebuilt their transmitter, the Klan blew it up again.
Wow.
I can't remember if it was the Exalted Cyclops or the Grand Dragon, because I often confuse their titles. But he said it was his proudest act. And I think that's because he understood how dangerous Pacifica is. Dangerous because it allows people to speak for themselves. And when you hear someone speaking from their own experience, whether they're a Palestinian child or an Israeli mother, whether they're an Iraqi uncle or a Venezuelan aunt or a kid from the South Bronx, you say, it sounds like my baba, it sounds like my abba, it sounds like my abu, it sounds like my ima or my whatever language you speak. It breaks down barriers. It breaks down caricatures and stereotypes that fuel the hate groups. That's why media is so important. I believe media is naturally a peace entity, that we build bridges. We shouldn't be advocating for the bombing of bridges.
You know, of course, the Klan's moves there were what we would now call terrorist actions. And as always, the terrorist action backfired and wound up helping the people they were trying to hurt. Now, how do you guys fund it and support it so that you are not reliant on these forces that push for war, et cetera?
Well, we began at Pacifica Radio, oldest independent media network in the country. It's listener and viewer supported. Well, listener supported because it's radio. Then going on to public access TV and the satellite networks. Well, we're television, so that's viewer supported. Also getting support from foundations and getting support from the networks that run us. So you put all of that together, you piece it together, and I have to admit a lot of the support comes from just selling DVDs and online at democracynow.org. You know, every day it's a TV broadcast, an hour, and people can buy either the CD or the DVD of every single one of our shows. And our T-shirts, our baseball caps, our logo is a Statue of Liberty, her torch, a microphone. And that really helps us tremendously. You know, like this week, for example, just 2 shows that we had. One was the legendary storyteller, troubadour, railroad tramp, folk musician, Utah Phillips. Wonderful reservoir of the stories of the 20th century. He died in Nevada City. I went out there last weekend, and the memorial service was in the place that he loved, on the Little League field. That's where he would go. He'd watch the kids and support him. When he'd go over to the hot dog stand first in line, they would always be instructed to tell him, we'd say, "Give me a dog, please." "Sorry, Mr. Utah Phillips, we have none left." He died of congestive heart failure. But anyway, he was a remarkable man, sort of a Pete Seeger figure. So in 2004, 4 years ago, I went to a pirate radio station in Santa Cruz. He was having a concert that night, and we crammed into this little attic-like place. And I interviewed Utah Phillips in Freak Radio. That's Free Radio Santa Cruz. And he told the stories of the 20th century. It was just magnificent. So when we play a show like that this past week, you know, everyone goes to our website at democracynow.org. Or another person this week. Another person was Gore Vidal, the legendary, irreverent, iconoclastic, controversialist Gore Vidal, who is the cousin of Al Gore, Jimmy Carter, Jacqueline Kennedy. They're like stepsister and brother. I mean, this is a guy who really lived the 20th century. He's going to be 83 in this coming October. And after the LA Times Festival of Books a few weeks ago, where we were both presenting our books, I followed him back to his home in Hollywood Hills, which is steeped in history, something the corporate media is not. When you have 8 seconds to speak or 9 seconds, you hardly get in any history. How are kids going to learn about the grassroots movements that have changed the world, that they can be a part of today? That's Democracy Now! Is steeped in that and steeped in looking at the future. So he told those stories.